जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय जगन्नाथाय जय बलदेवाय जय सुभद्रा मैया जय हो सुदर्शन जय जगन्नाथाय जय बलदेवाय जय सुभद्रा मैया जय हो सुदर्शना जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी नयन पथगामी भव तुम्हें जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयन पथगामी नयन पथगामी भव तुम्हें जय जगन्नाथ जय जगन्नाथ स्वामी जय जगन्नाथ जय रोहिणी नंदन जय बलदेव जय रोहिणी नंदन जय बलदेव जय सुभद्रा जय सुदर्शना जय सुभद्रा मैया जय हो सुदर्शना जय हो लक्ष्मी नरसिम्हा जय हो अनंत देव जय लक्ष्मी नरसिम्हा जय हो प्रहलाद महाराज जय हो राधा कृष्ण चंद्र राधा कृष्ण चंद्र राधे जय हो गौरांगी बेंगलोरेश्वर जय गौरांगी बेंगलोरेश्वर जय गौरांगी बेंगलोरेश्वर जय गौरांगी बेंगलोरेश्वर जय वामन देव जय वामन देव वामन देव जय हो वामन देव। जय गिरी गोवर्धन जय गिरी गोवर्धन जय गिरी गोवर्धन जय गिरी गोवर्धन। जय शालिग्राम जय शालिग्राम शालिग्राम जय हो शालिग्राम। जय गौरानिताय गौरानिताय गौरनिताय जय गौरानिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद। जय हो गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौरा हरि बोल। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी शील प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन बीबीटी संस्थापकाचार्य जगत गुरु शील प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य लीला पृष्ठ जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर गोस्वामी महाराज शील प्रभुपाद की जय। नामाचार्य शीला हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। भक्ति प्रदायिनी श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। प्रेम से कहो जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि श्री गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण चंद्र गोप गोपिका राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की जय। जय श्री सीता मैया श्री राम श्री लक्ष्मण श्री हनुमान की जय। जय श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेवा सुभद्रा महारानी श्री सुदर्शन चक्र की जय। जय श्री श्री नवदीप मायापुर धाम की जय। जय श्री श्री मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। जय श्री श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री द्वारकाधीश धाम की जय। श्री श्री साकेत अयोध्यापुरी धाम की जय। समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। कलयुग पावन हरि नाम संकीर्तन महायज्ञ की जय। Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Books Distribution की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada की जय। निताई गौर सिद्धनाथ प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतिरुत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति निष्ठकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि श्री गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। So welcome all the devotees in today's Srimad Bhagavatam morning session. On behalf of ISKCON Seshadripuram, I welcome you all connected through various social media platforms. And today we are going to discuss from Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, 31st chapter, and the verse number is 38. So let me share my screen so that all of you can see the verse for today. So let me know once you are able to view this. So any one of you can say that you are able to view it, and we can start from there. Are you able to view it? I hope you are all able to view this. So we are going to read from Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, 31st chapter, and the verse number is 18. And the canto third and the chapter which we are going to discuss is Lord Kapila's instructions on the movements of the living entities. And under this chapter, we are going to discuss about this 18th verse, which is today's discussion point of view. We need to recite this, and all of you can recite at your own place, and you can repeat after me at your own place. Okay. येने दृशिं गतिमसो दशमास्य ईश सङ्ग्राहितः पुरुदयेन भवादृशेन स्वेनेव तुष्यतु कृतेन स दीननाथः को नाम तत्प्रति विनाञ्जलिमस्य कुर्यात् येने दृशिं गतिमसोदसमास्य ईश सङ्ग्राहितपुरुदयेन भवादृशेन स्वनेश तुष्यतु प्रतेन स दीननाथ को नाम तत्प्रति विनाञ्जलिमस्य कुर्यात् येने दृशिं गतिमसोदसमास्य ईश सङ्ग्राहितपुरुदयेन भवादृशेन स्वनेव तुष्यत कृतेन स दीननाथ को नाम तत्प्रति विनाञ्जलिमस्य कुर्यात्. So synonyms: Yena, by whom, the Lord, Idrisha, such, Gatim, a condition, Asayu, that person, myself, Dasamasyaha, Dasmasyaha, 10 months old, Isha, O Lord, Sangrataha, was made to accept, Purudayena, very merciful, Bhavadrashena, incomparable, Svena, own, Eva, alone, Tushyatu, may he be pleased, Pratena, with his act, Saha, that Deenanathaha, refuse of the fallen souls, Kaha, who, Nama, indeed, Tat, that mercy, Prati, in return, Veena, accept with, Anjalim, folded hand, Asya of the Lord, Kuryat can repay. Translation and the purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanarvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The translation is, My dear Lord, by your causeless mercy, I am awakened to consciousness, although I am only 10 months old. For this causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the friend of all fallen souls, there is no way to express my gratitude but to pray with folded hands. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, intelligence and forgetfulness are both supplied by the super soul sitting within with the individual soul within the body. When he sees that a conditioned soul is very serious about getting out of the clutches of the material influence, the Supreme Lord gives intelligence internally as super soul and externally as the spiritual master, or as an incarnation of the personality of God at Himself. He helps by speaking instructions such as Bhagavad Gita. The Lord is always seeking the opportunity to reclaim the fallen souls to His abode, the kingdom of God. We should always feel very much obliged to the personality of Godhead, for He is always anxious to bring us into the happy condition of eternal life. There is no sufficient means to repay the personality of Godhead for His act of benediction. Therefore, we can simply feel gratitude and pray to the Lord with folded hands. This prayer of the child in the womb may be questioned by some atheistic people. How can a child pray in such a nice way in the womb of his mother? Everything is possible by the grace of the Lord. The child is put into such a precarious condition externally, but internally he is the same, and the Lord is there. By the transcendental energy of the Lord, Everything is possible. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्वेतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती नामिने श्रीवार्षभानवी देवी दयताय कृपाब्दये कृष्ण संबंध विज्ञान दायिने प्रभवे नमः। माधुर्योज्वल प्रेमाध्या श्री रूपानुगा भक्तिदा श्री गौर करुणा शक्ति विग्रहाय नमोस्तुते। नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्रीमूर्तये दीनतारिणे रूपानुगा विरुद्ध अपसिद्धांत ध्वांतना हरिणे नमो गौर किशोराय साक्षात् वैराग्य मूर्तये विप्रलंब रसाम्बोधे पादाम्बुजे ते नमः। नमो भक्ति विनोदाय सच्चिदानंद नामिने गौरशक्ति स्वरूपाय रूपानुगावराय ते गौरविर्भव भूमेष्त्वं निर्दिष्ट सज्जन प्रियः वैष्णव सार्वभौमः श्रीजगन्नाथाय ते नमः। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरकसे नमः। पंचतत्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूप स्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्त शक्तिकं। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। जयतां सुरतोपंगोर मम मंदमतेरगति मतस्सरस्वपादाम्बुजो श्रीराधा मदन मोहनो दिव्याद वृंदरण्य कल्पद्रुमदो श्रीमद्रत्नागरा सिंहासनो स्थो श्रीमद्राधा श्रीलगोविन्ददेवो पृष्ठालिभिः सेव्या मनोस्मरामि। श्रीमनरासरसारम्भि वांसी वटतट स्थितः कर्शन वेणु स्वनिर्गोपी गोपीनाथ श्रियेस्तु नः। तप्त कांचना गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि श्री गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरो दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। हरे कृष्ण। So welcome again to this morning session of Srimad Bhagavatam. And today, as we discussed earlier, that we are going to discuss about third canto, 31st chapter and 18th verse. This particular verse and this particular chapter is very important from the perspective of all the devotees who want to know the intricacies involved when a living entity is actually incarnating in this world as human. So in this particular chapter, Lord Kapila is giving instruction on the movements of the living entities. And the contents actually, if you have already, attending this class, then you must be knowing that the previous was how it was being discussed about the pain in which living entities is actually in the womb of his mother is facing. So we need to understand this position is very difficult. So sometimes we may think that taking dying is the most painful experience for a living entity. And as you know that Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi are the four most important aspect of a living entity in terms of the kind of phases that he's going to face. And in this particular chapter we are discussing about that how a living entity is taking birth, and when he's in the womb of his mother, and what kind of situation he goes through, what kind of prayers he do, and most important is what is the consciousness of the living entity. And in this particular chapter, Lord Kapila is talking about the movements of living entities. As you know that in earlier verses actually it was being discussed that how a living entity from the very day one, once he enters into the womb of his mother, and from then onwards actually how he's praised and how he's counting the days actually when he's going to take birth. And here actually in this particular verse, the living entity is praying to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That my dear Lord, by your causeless mercy, I am awakened to the consciousness. And although I am only 10 months old, for this causeless mercy of Supreme Personality of Godhead, a friend of all the fallen souls, there is no way to express my gratitude but to pray with folded hands. So it's very important from the devotee's perspective is that how much we should have the attitude of gratitude, because there was not a single moment in our life that we are not having the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, in all the aspects of life. And even when we were not aware of the anything around us, still that time also the Lord was present with us. In the Kathopanishad, it is stated that like there is a tree and there are two birds on the tree. Similarly, one bird is actually, is acting, and the other bird is actually, looking into the activities of the another bird. So similarly, this body is like a tree, and the living entity is one of the bird, and the super soul is another bird, another bird. So one bird, the living entity is performing various activities, and the evident of those activities is super soul, who's another bird. Right? So Lord is always with us. It is our nature that we actually do not actually subscribe to the idea that we are actually being accompanied by Lord all the time. And here it is very clearly stated that how a living entity is when it's come to the consciousness, because if you are already went through all the previous verses, so in those previous verses, Lord Kapila is actually talking about that how different limbs of the body are being created and developed actually during this process, and when living entity is in the womb of his mother, right? And here in the seventh month actually the living entity gained the consciousness, and once he gained the consciousness, then actually he laments on his position that how actually I performed so many sinful activities, and because of the resultant action of those you know activities, now I'm suffering, right? So it is to be understood here that the birth is as painful as death, because it is said and it is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that once a living entity is actually leaving this body, at that time, in 1 second, the living entity actually experience the pain of 40,000 scorpions bites in 1 second. And who knows that how long it will going to prevail. So the death is very painful. Not only this body pain is there, but so much of mental suffering is also there for the living entity. Because whatever the accumulation that he has done during his lifetime, he's going to leave everything now, right? So once a living entity is leaving this body, then all the possessions, all the accumulation, and all the awards, whatever he has actually gained during this life, whatever degrees has he has actually accumulated, right? Whatever the possessions that he have, the property. So it is said that when you leave this body, everything is multiplied by zero, right? So suppose if you have four good friends, right? You consider them as your best friends. So they are not going to help you once you are going to leave this body. So even if they are hundreds of friends you may be having, but when you are going to leave this body, the everything will be multiplied by zero because you are not going to get those friends again in the next life, right? You may be having 1,000 crores in your account, but you cannot reclaim those 1,000 crores in your next life. So as soon as you die, 1,000 crore is multiplied by zero, right? Similarly, you may be having a lot of properties, maybe thousands of acres of properties, right? And thousands of 2 BHK, 3 BHK, whatnot, right? So everything will be going to multiplied by zero, right? So again, you may be having 4 or 5 PhDs, but again those PhDs will be multiplied by zero. You cannot claim those PhDs in your next life, right? Again, you have to restart from scratch. You have to go to LKG, UKG, right? And the same process you have to go. You cannot, claim that, I have, two PhDs in my previous life. So please actually, you should actually, don't, allow me to enter into these process actually, because I am already having PhD in my previous life, right? So you cannot reclaim anything from your previous life, right? But the good thing is that whatever the progress that you have made in a spiritual path, that is not going to waste. That is not going in vain, right? So this the guarantee is given by Lord Himself in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in second chapter 40th verse, where He's saying that Neha Bikramno Nashasте Pratyavayo na Vidyate Swalpam Apiyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhaya. So all even a little progress that is made on the spiritual path is never go in vain, and it actually saves us from the greatest dangers. So everything said and done, but if we do not have the attitude of gratitude, because here actually, because when a living entity or any person for that matter, when we have this attitude of gratitude, right? So attitude of gratitude is very difficult to find nowadays in people, because we actually take things for granted, right? Whatever the parents has done for us, whatever the friends are doing for us, whatever the family members are doing for us, whatever the devotees are doing for us, we should be very grateful to each and everything, because nothing can happen without the mercy of the Lord, right? And at the end of the day, Krishna is Sarva Karana Karana. Ishwara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karana. So he is the cause of everything. So the mercy or the favors that we are receiving from anyone in this world is because of the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And with His mercy, everything is possible. This is what Prabhupada is emphasizing in this verse particularly, that when a living entity actually recognizes the mercy of Lord in his life, then actually the real progress begins. So we should have that attitude of gratitude. Otherwise, that attitude of gratitude will come when we are in very grave situation, right? So when we are in very grave situation, we are in difficulties, right? Then we can easily see that how many people actually helped us in the process. But when we are in good times, then we do not actually recognizes those hands in our progress, right? We simply take it for granted, right? So this is what we should avoid, and we should always be grateful to each and every person in our life. And what to say about Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's there with us from time immemorial with us, and he's actually helping us in each and everything in our life. But we should take our time, and we should actually thank Lord for everything in our life, right? Even we are taking a morsel of food in our mouth, and when it goes down in the stomach, how it is being digested, How many times we think that how it is happening? So many things are happening without our intervention, without we being vigilant about it, without we being aware of it. The things are happening in our body and around us. So we should be very thankful. This is what Lord says in Bhagavad Gita. Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashrita Pranapana Samayukta Pachamya Annam Chaturbhidham. So Lord is saying that I am that Vaishwanar fire which actually digests the food in our stomach, right? But how many times actually when we eat food, we worry about the digesting thing, and we actually, thank Lord for doing it for us. But He's not doing for us; He's doing for everyone, for that matter. But we should be very thankful that Lord is actually, is being our, sustainable power throughout. So we need to be very thankful. We should be having that attitude of gratitude. But here in this verse, we need to understand that how a living entity is actually praying, because Prabhupada is saying that once a living entity actually comes in this world, right? So here actually living entity is surrounded by so many abominable things, because once the living entity is in the womb, he is surrounded by mucus, you know, the urine, the stool, the blood, and the waste which is being produced by himself, the body, right? Body of the living entity, right? So he is surrounded by those abominable things, right? And in this, difficult and grave situation, he actually, the living entity, prays to the Lord that now actually I am totally recognizing your hand in everything in my life, and now I'm praying to you, right? So it is said that once we leave, the womb of our mother, actually, just before that, actually, you know, the Yog Maya and the Devi Maya, right? So Devi Maya actually captures our intelligence, right? And because we were having that remembrance of the Lord in the womb of the mother, then how we forget Lord after coming out of the womb of our mother? It is very, astonishing that how it is happening, because Devi Maya actually captures the consciousness of the living entity, and because of that, now he's having that forgetfulness. Because in the womb of mother, he was very sober, right? He was praying to the Lord. He was acknowledging Lord's mercy. He was thanking the Lord. He was having that attitude of gratitude. But how come when he comes out of the womb of the mother, then he forgets everything? So this is because of Lord is actually, having this power to give us the forgetfulness and the remembrance. And this is what Lord says in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Sarvasya chaham hadi sannivishto matta smartir jnanam apohanam cha. So then actually the Lord is actually giving that remembrance and forgetfulness. And here also Lord is actually helping living entity to pray also. So just see that how Lord is actually so wonderful, that He's giving that energy, the mercy, and the remembrance, so that we can remember the Lord in the womb of our mother. And it is said that when the living entity actually enters in the womb of mother and gain the consciousness, and after that, actually, once recognizing that now is in the most grave situation of his life, and again he has to take birth. So that's a very difficult thing, because the living entities now understand that once he will get out of the womb of mother, then he will again, being captured by Devi Maya, he will again fall into this Bhavasagara. So now he's afraid. But at the same time, because he's facing so much of difficulties in the womb of his mother, that's why he actually prays to the Lord that now, Lord, actually, I am suffered so much. Because it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, because in previous verses also you must have seen that how a living entity is actually praying. Because now is actually seeing that he's, and it is said that if the living entity is fortunate enough, then he can remember his previous 100 lives actually, and whatever the activities that he's performed in those lives, and mostly the sinful activities he remembers, and he actually repent, and he lament on those activities that he has performed. And then actually he become very morose, that now again I'm going to be caught by Maya Devi, and again I will fall into this material world, and again I will forget the Lord. So that's why he become afraid, that now I don't want to go out of my mother's womb. I want to stay here, because as soon as I get out of the womb of mother, I will be captured by Maya Devi, right? But again, because he's facing so much of trouble, so much of pain he's having, because it is very difficult to stay in, in such situation. Just think about that, you need to be in a plastic bag and you are surrounded by all abominable things, right? And now in this liquid, in this polythene bag, and again you have to be in arc position, right? Just like arrow, just like bow actually, right? And now you need to be there in that situation for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. No, you need to be there for 9 months altogether. And especially if you see in this particular, but it is said that 10 months basically, because earlier it was used to be 10 months. The baby used to be there in mother's womb for 10 months. But later on, with the progression of Kali Yuga, the days actually got declined, and now it is 9 months. And it is said that the gestation period will keep on decreasing with as soon as the going to progress actually, and so as the age and so many things will get decreased with the progression of Kali Yuga. So now we need to understand here that how a living entity who is in such abominable situation is praying to the Lord. It is because of mercy of the Lord. Without Lord's mercy, nothing can happen. And this is what Prabhupada is emphasizing, that those atheists in this world, actually they sometimes question, right? That how a child, right? How a child can pray in such a nice way inside the womb of his mother. Because we sometimes connect this with the brain's intelligence, right? Because it is nothing to do with the basically, right? Because this is the forgetful and remembrance, right, are given by the Lord, and it is not the power of brain which actually stimulate the consciousness. It's other way around, because the capacity of brain is being stimulated by the consciousness of the living entity. So this is something which we can understand this from this verse, that when a living entity actually praying to the Lord in the womb of his mother, because if we see that when a child is actually comes out of his mother's womb, then he can't even speak, can't even recognize as what is happening, and he's so helpless. Then how come that living entity who learn to speak even after 2 3 years is now actually praying to the Lord in such eloquent way? It is because of the mercy of the Lord. And with mercy of the Lord, everything is possible. And if we want to understand Lord's, because if you see all the Shastras, all the Vedas, and all the scriptures, in totality, then the goal of reading those scriptures is not to understand the Lord basically, because we cannot understand Lord with our own intelligence, because our intelligence is having a limitation, right? So suppose our capacity to understand the Lord, like it is measurable basically, right? Our brain's power, the processing power of our brain is again measurable, right? You can measure that, right? And it is again limited, whatever it may be, it is limited, right? You can actually have, so our memory or our brain's processing power, you can compare it with a 5 liter can, right? Can. And the Lord, the Lord and his activities which we want to understand is like an ocean, right? So how can a 5 liter can hold an ocean, right? So how much a 5 liter can hold? It can hold only 5 liter. It cannot hold more than 5 liters, right? But Lord is like an ocean. So how much you can understand Lord? Not more than 5 liter, right? This is what the capacity of our brain is. right? But with the mercy of the Lord, everything is possible, right? This is what happened in case of Dhruva Maharaj, right? Little Dhruva, who was just 5 years old, he was praying to the Lord, right? And he went to the forest with a determination that he's going to have, a bigger empire than his father, and this was his motive, right? But once he had darshan of the Lord, face to face, at that time he forgot about that, and he actually just thinking that I came here for broken glasses and I got the diamonds, right? So at that time he had that, you know, deep desire to pray to the Lord, and he want to pray to the Lord with eloquent, languages and everything. But he was not having that power, right? A 5-year-old boy, what he can say to the Lord, right? But Lord understood his desire, that he wants to glorify me. He wants to say something, and that too so eloquently want to, glorify me. But he's not having that capability. Then how he's going to, do that? So as soon as Lord actually touches the head of Dhruva Maharaj with his conch shell, the Dhruva actually gained all the knowledge. The knowledge actually manifested in his mind, right? And then he eloquently prays to the Lord. And still now, we all the sages after, Dhruva Maharaj, all the greatest devotees of the Lord after Dhruva Maharaj, they actually pray to the Lord by using Dhruva's prayers. It was so eloquently, said by Dhruva Maharaj. So how can a boy of 5 years with having a little intelligence can actually pray to the Lord in such eloquent way? Just because of the mercy of the Lord, right? So if we can recognize mercy of the Lord in each and every aspect of our life, then half of our journey to the spiritual realm is done. It's completed. But if we do not recognize that, and if we just think that by our own efforts we can do that, the Lord is actually never ever can be understood by those efforts. And that's why one of the name of Lord is Adhokshaja, right? So Adhokshaja means that you cannot understand Lord by any kind of effort, right? So there are yogis who are actually being doing so many, so much of austerities from many lives, and it is said that maybe a yogi is actually doing all the yogic process perfectly, right? And then actually he's doing those yogic actions from time immemorial, but still he won't be able to capture a glimpse of the Lord, because of Lord is not actually Lord's glory and Lord's personality cannot be fathomed by those material processes, right? Only by the sweet will of the Lord we can understand Lord. And that's why one of the name of Lord is Swarat, means he is actually not bounded by anything. He is having his own will, and that's why only when he is actually pleased with us, then only he can he will reveal his personality before us. And that can happen only when we have that attitude of gratitude. Until unless we having that attitude of gratitude, we cannot actually have that mercy manifested in our life. And it's not, we need to see Lord in each and every living entity, right? So that's the summum bonum of all the yogic processes. It's the summum bonum of all the spiritual processes, when we recognize that Lord's mercy is flowing everywhere and all the time. And this is what is called as Sanatana. Sanatana means eternal, right? And Prabhupada very nicely gives the definition of Sanatan Dharma, that what is the dharma, what is the duty of living entity. Okay. So in one of the verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Narad Muni is saying to Parikshit Maharaj, and is saying that Tasmat Sarvatmana Rajan Harihi Sarvatra Sarvada Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyo Bhagavan Ranam. So this is the duty of the living entity, that we always glorify Lord, Shrotavyam kirtitavyastam smratavyo Bhagwan Ranam. Shrotavyam means to hear. Kirtavyasam means to speak. Smratamya means to remember, right? So if we do this for all the time, this is called as Sanatana. And this is the Sanatana Dharma of the living entity. So we need to understand. Sometimes people get, carried away with the so-called definition of the Sanatan Dharma. But that is not the Sanatan Dharma definition. Sanatan Dharma, the definition that Prabhupada gives is that to always remember, glorify, and hear about the Lord. And that is the real Sanatan Dharma. Now, in this particular verse, Prabhupada very nicely says that, you know, the only way to get out of the clutches of material influence is by the mercy of the Supreme Soul and by the mercy of the spiritual master. So the super soul sitting in our heart actually influences or give the intelligence to the living entity or to the us, right? And the externally, the spiritual master gives that intelligence to the disciple or the living entity, right? So the externally it is spiritual master, internally it is the super soul or the supreme personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, actually gives that intelligence by which we can come out of this clutches of Maya. And how we can do that actually? This is again very nicely explained by Lord in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, 10th verse, where Lord says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. So those who are continuously, it's not that one day you do and other day you do not do, right? Or you just forget, right? If one actually do is for, continuously, for regularly, if he does that, right, then what happens? Then Lord says that Tesham Satata Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purukam. And how to worship the Lord? With all love and reverence. We should do that. If we do that, then what will happen? The Lord says that I gave them Buddhi Yoga, that intelligence. What kind of intelligence? To earn thousands of crores or become famous in this world, right? No, that not that kind of intelligence. Lord says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayantite. That intelligence by which they can come back to me. Not that intelligence by which you can earn thousands of crores. No, not that intelligence. The intelligence by which you can come back to me. Right? So internally, the intelligence is given by the Supreme Lord, and the externally it is given by the spiritual master. So they help the living entity to come out of the influence of material nature, right? So now the Lord, why is doing that actually? Can anyone ask? Anyone can ask this question that why Lord is giving this kind of remembrance, right? Because at the end of the day, Lord wants each and every one of us, each and everyone, to come back to His abode, and that's why He actually gives that remembrance, right? And because of that we actually praise. Otherwise how you can pray? Otherwise how the intelligence come to a living entity in the womb of mother to pray, right, without the mercy of the Lord, right? Because Lord actually give that mercy, the intelligence, right? And because of that intelligence now we can, and it is written in the previous verses that if the living entity is fortunate enough, then he can remember his 100 previous lives, right? So just remember, just think about it, that now you can see 100 of lives, 100 lives actually, basically, in the womb of mother. And you can remember all your previous friends, your mother, your parents, basically your spouses, your children, of for 100 lives, and how much pain each and every life you're losing them, right? One life you had a different set of people around you, another life you had, again a different set of people around you. Now the pain of losing them is so much, right? And you are doing so many other nonsense activities as well. The pious activities will be there, but some of the impious activities are also there, right? or you can call it akarma or vikarma or sakarma. So many karmic activities we are doing in a lifetime, right? And a living entity remembers all those karmic activities that he has done in his previous lives, and it's so painful, right? Just think about it, right? Even if you lose one near and dear one, it gives us so much of grief, right? And think about, you lose them for 100 times, right? So it is so painful, and that's why the living entity cries. And that's why, by remembering that each and every time I took birth and I fall into, this situation, every time I did that, but the lessons are not learned, right? So that's why the living entities in the upcoming verses, you will see that he prays, and he actually, give the promise that once I come out of the womb of my mother, then I will never forget you, my Lord. I will become a devotee of you. I will, make this life as the last one, and I will come out of the vicious circle of the birth and death. But it doesn't happen, because as soon as the living entity come out of the womb of his mother, and the Maya Devi captures the consciousness, and that's why he forgets. But again, the forgetfulness and the remembrance are given by the Lord. So if we keep on praying to the Lord, that Lord, please give us that kind of intelligence. Please give your mercy so that we never forgets you, and we always remember the promise that we have made in the womb of our mother, that we are not never going to forget you. We will always worship you. We'll become a devotee. And this is what Lord is also saying in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, right? Manmana mad bhakto madhyachi mam namaskuru, right? And this is what we have prayed. This is what we have actually, promised to the Lord, that once we will come out of the womb of our mother, when we will always be engaged in the spiritual activities. And actually, it happens other way around, right? We forget the Lord, and we do all kind of activities other than going back to the, which are, supportive to going back to Godhead. So it's very difficult without the mercy of the Lord. But Lord actually comes in, in form of spiritual master in our life, and He help us to remember, the prayers that we have done, the prayers that we have done in mother's womb, and the promise that we have made. So spiritual master make us remember those prayers and the promises that we have made, and in this way, the spiritual master actually acts as supreme personality of God. And that's why it is said that spiritual master is not less than Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he actually help us to remember the Lord, and the, revive our consciousness so that we can go back to home, back to Godhead. And that's why the position of a spiritual master is equivalent to God in our life. And in this particular verse, this is what is being said, that there is no sufficient means to repay the personality of Godhead for his act of benediction. There is no way by which we can repay to the Lord. There is no way by which we can repay the spiritual master, right? So we can only ask for mercy. We can only do the service, but we cannot repay the debt. And this is what the position of the living entity. And there is no sufficient way means by which you can repay the supreme personality of Godhead or the spiritual master. We can simply feel gratitude. We can simply feel gratitude, and these are the words of Srila Prabhupada. And we can just pray to the supreme personality of Godhead that we need your mercy. And we, in this position of, with the attitude of gratitude and having love for Supreme Personality of Godhead, we can pray in the same fashion as we did it in the womb of our mother. So with that, actually, we will conclude it. And if you have any question, you can ask. I think there is no question. So with that, we will end with one verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, and which actually says that once we obtain this, human form of life, what is our goal? and how to speak. I mean, what we can speak about Lord's mercy, because Lord is so merciful actually. Because if you see in one of the case where actually Lord liberated Putana and given her the position of mother, right? In the spiritual world, right? Aho bakiyam stanakaalakutam jigam sayapayayadhyapya sattvi lebe gatim dhatri uchitam tatonyam kamavadayalum sharanam rajema. So the Lord who has given Putana, who had come to kill the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. But what Lord actually did in return, right? Lord actually gave her the position of his mother in the spiritual world. So he is giving a killer, right? A position of mother in the spiritual world. Then what to speak of the devotees who are praying with all love and reverence to the Lord. So we should be very, much determined in our efforts to pray the, Lord in day-to-day life. And every moment we should recognize that mercy of the Lord, and we should see the Lord's hand in everything, and then we will be able to recognize the mercy of the Lord, and we will be able to pray in you can say sufficiently, right? And then the mercy will flow automatically in our life, and then Lord will give us that intelligence by which we can actually go back to home, back to Godhead. So I will conclude it here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. अमल पुराण श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। श्रील गुरुदेव की जय। समवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। निताई गौर